Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Tony Sirianni podcast. I am thrilled to have my friend Susie Cranston, who's the CEO of Crescent, with us today. Welcome, Susie.
Thank you so much, Tony. It is a pleasure to be here. And as a longtime listener, I feel very honored to be sitting in this seat today.
Well, it's good to have you. It's really good to have you. So, what I want to do is take advantage of your, knowledge of our industry and, your experience of having, worked here for so long, and talk a little bit about sort of one of the topics that's really on everybody's mind, which is equity, right?
Yes.
Equity and enterprise value, what that means. And you and I have talked a little bit, and you sort of talk about the old Goldman Sachs model is kind of what you're trying to build over there, Crescent. So I think it's exciting. So just explain a little bit what you were talking to me about that.
Yeah. So I think, what we're really trying to build at Crescent is a model where, the advisors who are doing such amazing work for our clients every day are also the people who help decide the future of the firm and help shape the strategy, and are also the people who benefit from the success of the firm ultimately. So one of the interesting facts about Crescent is that we are 80% owned by clients and advisors and employees. So we are very much a partnership in that way. And I think it's really important if you want to have a successful business that the people who are closest to the clients are the ones who are helping to shape the agenda, shape the strategy. Because as I'm sure you've probably seen more so even than I, if you're doing a great job for clients every day, then the rest of it does always seem to fall in place.
It does, and equity from a perspective of a CEO and being out there, equity is the most flexible instrument you have, right? I mean, it creates optionality of all sorts, and we had talked a little bit also about uh, the optionality in regard to taxes, how you receive income. This is something that wasn't for your typical wealth advisor. I mean, let's go back 10 years, 50. I mean, it just wasn't
Yeah.
there, and now we
Yeah.
have this great chance.
Yeah, it's so interesting to look at the tools, to your point, that we have at our disposal today as we think about how to compensate and reward performance, right?
Yeah.
So, the way that equity can work in an organization like Crescent is that, we have incredibly, I think, attractive economic deals where you can have, a substantial, cash opportunity. But the way you can structure things in a firm like Crescent allows you to take all that opportunity as capital gains as opposed to W-2 income.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
when you think about, a multiple of your current revenue and the benefit of those two different tax treatments,
Yeah.
that alone becomes a very substantial portion of, wealth creation for an individual advisor's family. The other thing that I think people don't always appreciate, especially if they're coming maybe more from a wirehouse type of environment, is that the acceleration of the value of equity in the RIA space has been quite tremendous. And so if you think about a very competitive deal, which some large portion of it can be in cash, but whatever portion you put in equity, think about that equity being able to further accelerate, right? I mean, there's some return that you get if you've got equity in a stock or situation like that. But just to give you a very specific example, one team that joined Crescent in 2024, they were able to more than double their equity between 2024 and today. So, all of a sudden, whatever the multiple of a deal is becomes further accelerated in a relatively,
I
compact period of time.
think
Um,
advisors are not getting good advice around this stuff. So, it's just hard. I mean, well, because the questions that they would normally, if this equity was going to a client, they'd be all
yeah.
over it, asking all the right questions and making sure they protect it right. And then I think sometimes the other CEOs too aren't as well versed as you are in this, and so they're having harder conversations, or they're just leaving stuff out. They're just not getting the real details.
Yeah. It is interesting to your point, Tony. I think because it's such a new way of designing these types of opportunities that you're right. We probably, as an industry, it's not as well known, it's not as well understood. Another component of equity that I think people don't appreciate and understand is that, there are also distributions, right? So, companies like Crescent, we're highly profitable. We do distributions at the end of every year. And so, again, just to use a very specific example, example because I have it in front of me, but this team that joined in 2024, their equity, has more than doubled since they joined. And, in 2025, they got 2.1 million of distributions, right? So, um,
Today.
so there's, a very substantial cash benefit to the distributions. But I think you're right. It's people aren't putting all the pieces together, and I just think the other thing I would say is that each firm does it slightly differently, right? If
They
you look at
do,
the
and
wire,
that's a challenge. Yeah, that's a
yeah,
challenge. And you guys also, it would have been great to join Crescent early, right? You would have had all those multiples, but certainly now you have. I mean, to be able to access distributions from a profitable firm and everything, that optionality becomes a serious thing. You can pull from a lot of different pieces, which is a big deal.
yeah, yeah. No, I think it's a really when you start, I have, as you might imagine, I've built out a lot of Excel models that look at all these different scenarios, and
Yeah.
it is really compelling. And you know, it makes sense in this. If you think about how much capital is chasing wealth right now, right?
Yeah.
There is so much demand for what we're doing, and so if you can join a firm that has built a strong reputation and is a place that is got solid fundamentals financially, it is a real kind of generational opportunity to really create something for your family that I don't think was maybe as available even 10 years ago.
No, it wasn't, and it wasn't. These businesses weren't thought of in the same way, and it's great that they're getting that recognition now. I just think it's a bit of a minefield. So you want to talk to somebody who's educated about it, or at least make sure there's someone like you there who's going to sit and walk them through it. So it's not just, oh yeah, this is going to work.
Right,
don't, don't
right.
worry about it.
That's
Right.
right. That's right.
So speaking of modern trends, and I think this is particularly interesting with Crescent because you guys have always had sort of a digital bent, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
kind of from the get go. But just want to talk a little bit about AI. There's the what you're seeing and how you're using it, but beyond kind of just hey, we're using it for marketing or we're sending our team newsletters out. I'm sure your
Yeah.
guys are doing that. But well, so how else are you using it and what do you see it? And also maybe a little background about the digital the digital
Digital
pedigree.
marketing, yeah. Well, it's really interesting. So as you mentioned, Tony, Crescent has always been a leader in digital marketing. And just to put some numbers around that, right? So we've brought in over $6 billion of opportunity of actual client business through our digital lead program. And the average revenue per client that we bring in through our digital lead program is $100,000 per client. So, these are very sizable, very substantial leads that come in through our digital marketing efforts. And I think, Crescent got lucky because we were very early to do this before other firms were doing it. And so that's given us a lot of entrenched and historical advantage because, as you know, so much of search and now AI is layered. And what you've done historically sort of
Yeah,
helps
I mean, so
build.
that's a real advantage. I know because I own a digital business, right? So to the extent that you're in there early and we're there, ahead, that really does make a difference. Because I think your first reaction would be 100. You're getting these 6 billion from, who's clicking on those things, but people are searching. Yeah.
I know. And it's so interesting, Tony, because one of the things I realized, I will admit, when I joined Crescent 2 years ago, I was a bit of a skeptic because I thought, who's, to your point, which
Which one is?
billionaires are clicking on links, to get opportunities. But what I've really realized is when you look at the wealth creation that's happened in the United States, right? I mean, we probably have over 100,000 people in the US alone that have over $100 million of net worth. And a lot of this wealth creation is not done in pockets where people have, huge networks of friends that also have $100 million. So if you're, somebody who earned their wealth by, building up a pest control business and you built it into the largest pest control business in the Northwest and then you sell it, you may not have a huge network of people to turn to say, hey, what should I do with my money? And so what do smart people do when they're not sure who to turn to? They do research, right? And so that's really where, Crescent's content has become an advantage. And to go back to your initial question around AI, Where that's also started to really help us is that we are now able to get digital leads through AI. So we have had, most of our pipeline today comes through ChatGPT or Claude, or, insert your favorite LLM. And that's because we have, as you know, from running a digital business yourself, this multiple layer of content that pops Crescent to the forefront. So certainly, one of the most important ways that we're using AI is to bring in new clients, right? And to help support our our business growth.
Uh,
But
no, I think what's interesting about that is the size, right? The size of these people having these larger. You just wouldn't expect that you would get larger accounts like that, and the proof's in the pudding because of what you guys have been able to put together. So I certainly want to talk about that because that kind of leads me into the family office stuff that I want to get to. But just one more second on AI in
yeah,
terms
yeah,
of I think advisors, there are concerns around AI too, right? This is going to replace me. I'm a firm that's very digitally oriented, or they're going to replace me. This is going to happen, and the other thing I worry about is regulation. We can talk about that next. But
yes,
how do you address, advisor concerns in general when it comes
yeah.
to?
So listen, I have a few theories here, but the first is that we've all read the McKinsey study that says there's going to be 100,000 shortage of advisors in the next 10 years. And what's interesting and what doesn't get shared as much about that same study is that that same deck also shows that clients have said they will pay a premium to have a human advisor.
Yes.
So at the same time that, we have a shortage of advisors coming and the demand for advisors is increasing, also people are saying, I want a human, right? So I think a big part of where AI fits into the future of our industry is that that is going to be the tool that allows people to become more efficient in ways that solve some of the shortage of talent that we may have. Because I actually think, and this is very contrarian, but I believe this, that there is a shortage of, I think there's a talent war coming for experienced
Yeah.
talent.
I
Because if you think about training grounds, they're going away with AI, and we need people who know what they're doing. So I actually think, investing in talent and making sure you have the right experienced talent is more important now than it ever was.
Yeah, and that's another thing to talk about that I want to get to eventually too, which is succession and next gen and all that.
Yeah.
But it is true. Our business is an apprentice business. You really
Yeah.
have to learn by listening and doing and seeing other people do it. It's very hard to do on your own. I was always really sort of against the closing of the offices and stuff like that because you really need to be around other people. How do you learn when you're 20? How do you know how to do a business lunch? Do I have a drink? Well,
Absolutely.
you don't know anything
Absolutely.
until you do it a couple of times, right? Because your answer would be, yeah, sure, why not? So yes, so that's an issue. So my concerns on the regulatory side just are manifold, but come down to the idea of, hey, if I'm sitting on a panel, a congressional panel, and I could say, well, why do you get a commission on this? You ran it through AI. I can also see you shouldn't get a commission on this because you didn't run it through AI. I mean, you could come to the same conclusion, right, for the same thing, and we're just not there.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, the other thing, I don't know if you or any of the listeners today have downloaded Claude Cowork, right? But I downloaded it a couple weeks ago, and it's incredible. Like I turn it on, and I built this thing that scans all my personal emails to find all the to-dos for my kids' school, and it saves me, hours a weekend to troll through everything. But essentially, it's writing code directly onto my computer. I mean, I have no idea what it's doing on my computer, right? And I realized as I built this incredible tool that saves me and my husband hours every weekend and makes sure that, we don't miss stuff for our kids, which sure anybody who's had to deal
Of
with,
course.
a May graduation, knows how many events there are. And at the same time, I'm realizing there's no way you can just allow everybody to like go into a corporate IT environment and code random things here and there, right? Like that has to be done in a safe way, right? So I think that AI, I mean, I already see it. There's lots of ways we're using it at Crescent, and every competitor every firm will say that there's lots of ways that people are doing it, and it's true. But to your point, Tony, I think that the full power of this and the transformational nature that we know is coming is going to take a bit longer in regulated industries like finance than it maybe took in, software, because we have to do it that carefully. And there's a lot of regulatory requirements that, what if your AI tool just rewrote Smarsh because it said,
And
oh, that's a faster way to process, right?
yeah, how is AI going to know its customer? I mean, stuff like that. It's just very, I think it was Ron Kraszewski who said that about the, markets. The AI is not really going to do anything with markets because it's not a chessboard, right? It's not a finite set of things. There's regulation, there's human emotion, and there's a million things that go into it. Particularly regulation, right? So, and look, believe it or not, we're getting close to time here. But I did want to talk about something that a lot of this brought up. We talked about in the beginning with all this, high end business coming through even digitally, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But you guys, skew higher end. You skew higher end with the advisors, and they skew younger. So I want to get to that
Yeah.
too. The family office stuff. Just quickly go through which, because I think that's terrific. What's going on there?
Yeah. So, I mean, we were very early adopters of family office. And that's because, for those of you that are not familiar with the Crescent founding story, our two co-founders they had their own family offices and didn't quite find what they wanted in the market. So that's what inspired them to build Crescent. So it's sort of, built by clients for clients is our tagline. And so we have over 150 professionals in an organization. We have, just shy of 700 employees. So a very substantial portion of our employees are dedicated solely to family office services. And so we do everything from, wealth strategy, insurance advisory, tax and strategy planning. We'll actually do taxes, philanthropy and impact, banking and lending, family governance and education, lifestyle services, CFO services, and then trust services as well. So we really have invested in a kind of the full gambit of what family offices need. And here's the thing that I would say that I think has been really interesting for all of us at Crescent to observe. If you think about the growing wealth in the United States, once a family has more than 100 million in assets under management, unless the person who earned the money loves managing their money all the time, that's when you start to need some sort of, even light family office infrastructure. And it's, you would never find somebody who had that much money who probably didn't have some sort of infrastructure. At the same time that the demand for that is growing and the number of 100, centimillionaires is never been bigger. There's not that many places that can provide those services. And so, if you actually look at who can solve this problem for clients, it's not a big population, and the people you rely on to cobble together that population is shrinking to our war for talent. So this has been a really fantastic way for us to win business, support business, keep business. And I also think we talked a little bit about, the generational wealth transfer that everyone talks about, but also we just know the stats, right? 80% of clients move their wealth when the, generation that owned it dies. And so this has been a real,
Well, I think sometimes advisors lack the confidence to have these conversations. You know what I mean? So the FA will have a great relationship with the patriarch or the matriarch, whoever has a family, and then when they go, they don't have a relationship. It was all based on golf or tennis or whatever it was they were doing, and then they go, and a lot of guys don't have the confidence to sit down even with those friends and say, look, we have all this. But when you have everything, it's much easier to say, hey, did you know? Our company has this. We can get you in front of experts, estate planning, this and that. Let's just take a look at your will,
That's exactly right. And you know what one of our most popular things for clients is the family governance and education, right? So if you say to a client, hey, let me run your family meeting and we'll talk about your values or your ethical will, and clients love that. They're so grateful. And then in those meetings, that's where you really start to build relationships with the next generation. So you're absolutely right. It's a wonderful tool to be able to offer.
When we educate, that's when we get the most clients, right?
Yeah.
So I did want to talk next gen, quickly, because it is unusual that your average is something like 40 something, right?
Yeah.
And the industry average is 60 something. Plus, these are not just 40s, but I'm assuming they're dealing with a lot of these young, wealthy professionals or people who are getting there. That's another thing about this family offices. In advisors' books, you've got these, somebody with maybe 5 million, but he's got a chain of grocery stores somewhere that's going to monetize at some point, and they're just going to take the business away from him when he goes to a big firm or somewhere else to do it, right?
So actually, you're exactly right, Tony. We actually have a program called the Catalyst Program, where we'll work with pre-liquidity founders that might have, hundreds of millions of kind of, illiquid wealth, right?
Yeah.
And what you see is that nobody wants to help people before they have the full liquidity, right? So there's a dearth of options for those people. And at the same time, we all know that the options that you have for structuring your estate in tax efficient ways, the things that you can do to sort of optimize your wealth portfolio, if you do that pre-liquidity event, you have many more options on the table. And so, one of the reasons we have such young advisors on average is that we've very successfully paired up a lot of those advisors with these pre-liquidity professionals, and those advisors are now $5-10 million advisors because those clients have had their liquidity. We did all
Yeah.
their family office planning, all their family office tax and bill pay while they were busy founders. There's no way they're going to move, right? Like we've been there for them,
Great
and they're
spot. Yeah.
entrenched.
Yeah, a great spot to be in. And like I said, you've also got advisors who have clients, and maybe they have $5 million of this person's net worth, but they have $10 million at Merrill, they got $10 million here. They're all over the place. So if you, again, the confidence, if you know you have the capability to deal with all of it, at least give it a shot. Have a conversation.
Totally. And one other point on that, Tony, what I think a lot of people at wirehouses don't understand is how much more freedom you have to support clients across all their private investments in an RIA, which, is a bigger and bigger portion of all our clients'
Yeah.
portfolios.
And they don't, a client like that doesn't want a one size fits all, because they'll say, you have to do it this way until you get to X millions. And
Right.
then by the time you get there, they're taking your client away from you anyway. By
That's
the
right.
way,
And
if you
you're
can't tell them in Nantucket, I got the glass end on my jacket.
I love that.
Just a little
Well,
trick.
I will also say that, clients also don't want to hear when they ask you for advice on a private investment they're considering that you can't help them, right? That's a tough
Right,
sell
right.
if they're paying a lot of fees. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I feel like there's more to talk about, but that's okay. We'll have to do it again on another call. I mean, and just quickly, from your point of view, because you guys seem to have been ahead of the game on a lot of stuff. Clearly ahead on the digital, clearly ahead on the family office. So you didn't have to spend a lot of time, rebuilding or getting from the outside like other people have to. By the way, other startup RIAs, that's what they have to do. I mean, I've run them. I know you gotta, band-aid a whole bunch of things together. What? So I'm interested from your point of view. What's next? Based on what are you building now that is going to be important in the future?
yeah. I mean, one of the things that we're really focused on is how to scale that family office services. I think that is an unserved, growing population where there's a lot of white space. And what's going to be really cool is that if you can use AI to automate tax prep, family office, like all the different pieces, then you can start to offer that to clients that maybe aren't big enough yet to have a family office, and really build your arms around them as well. So you'll see more automation to allow those family office services to be provided to smaller clients, that I think will also be a huge value add and retention opportunity.
I agree, and I've never met a $20 million client that doesn't fancy themselves a family office, right? They think, well, I should be. I got a lot going, which they do have a lot
That's
going on.
right. And I get it. I mean, it's you're busy, if you're busy executive, you're busy executive, or you're busy at whatever you do. So
Well, look, thank you, Susie, so much. Really appreciate it. This has been a great call. We'll do it. We'll do this again.
I would love that. Thank you so much, Tony. I really appreciate it. It was an honor.